Welcome, everyone. I want to welcome you to the second part of hyperlinking your lessons with Hyperdocs. Welcome to those who were at the previous webinar on this topic, and welcome to those who were not in the previous one. I want to go through a couple things before we get started with the main event. First of all, this is sponsored by Links, which is a government department, U.S. Department of Ed, government-sponsored website, and it's part of Links webinar activity events. So we have, there'll be others to come. We're going to have a couple other things related to the logistics here. When you enter, if you have a question, Ashly's going to stop every once in a while and ask for questions. Then every once in a while, so I apologize. We'll see, we always have technical difficulties with this. So, okay, I will continue, hoping you can hear me. So enter into the chat function if you can, if you have a question for us. You want to set it on to all entire.
David, I think we lost you.
Me?
Oh,
no, I'm sorry, not David, I'm sorry.
Steve, we lost.
Yeah, Steve.
Okay, I'm pretty much finished. If David, you want to take over?
Sure. I hope everybody can hear me okay. This is David Rosen. I'm the moderator of the Links Integrating Technology group, which is part of the Links Community of Practice. And it's my pleasure today to introduce Ashly Winkle. But before I do, I just want to speak to those of you who may have joined us today but could not join us yesterday, or if you did join us yesterday but you came late or had to leave before the end of the webinar, feel free to put questions into the questions box, and they could be all kinds of questions. They could be, please explain this again, but say what the this is. It could be, that reminds me of something that I did once and it looked like this, and what's your reaction to that? Whatever strikes you as being important, but not urgent. So the reason I say that is we will get to all of the questions, but probably not all of them today. We have a week of discussion next week with Ashly, asynchronous discussion Monday through Friday, and this will be an opportunity for those of you who've participated in the webinars and others to ask questions about Hyperdocs. So we may cover some of the same ground in the discussion next week, but it will give you an opportunity to have some back and forth discussion with Ashly. So you might ask a question, get an answer, say yes, thank you, but, and then continue. And that dialogue could go on all week if you wish. So we hope that you will join us on Integrating Technology next week. And if we should by any chance miss your question, or if you have additional questions, you can post them next week. So let me introduce Ashly to you if you weren't part of the webinar yesterday. She's the Director of Distance Learning. She is a high school equivalency teacher and trainer. She is a technology coach for the Literacy Council of Tyler in Tyler, Texas. She started about 5 years ago as a volunteer and immediately fell in love with adult ed, and within a matter of months became a teacher. and she has a master's degree in teaching and learning, specialization in teaching leadership, and a Master of Science in Business Management with a specialization in online education. And I can tell you from my own experience attending webinars with Ashly, and also through the discussions that we've already had that she's participated in on Links, that she is extremely passionate about teaching adults and integrating technology into adult education instruction. So with that, Ashly, we eagerly await the wisdom you will impart to us today.
Okay, thank you, David. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And kind of like David said, if you were not here or you're not familiar with Hyperdocs, we will supply you with a website that I've made that should help you out, and I'm always open to questions, but you will see some examples today as well, so I think it'll at least give you an idea of what we covered yesterday. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the objectives of this workshop. By the end of this workshop, adult educators will know what skills and knowledge are needed to use Hyperdocs, how to create Hyperdocs using Google applications, how to use and edit pre-made Hyperdocs, how to use Hyperdocs in their lessons, and how to collaborate and find other Hyperdocs. So the first thing we're going to discuss is how to Hyperdoc skills and knowledge. We did briefly talk about this. We touched on it a little bit yesterday. And if you are familiar with Hyperdocs, feel free to go ahead and put in your chat pod what skills and knowledge you think your students and the teacher would need to use the Hyperdocs. As well as I want you also thinking about technology that's going to be needed for teacher and students as they use Hyperdocs. I'm going to, as you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and share the things that I know from my experience. You may come up with some other things I had not thought about, so feel free to add those to the chat box. So teacher and student needs. This came up yesterday as well. They do need a Google account. Google account meaning a Gmail account. They will need the internet. That also we mentioned yesterday. They will need some form of technology. So this is not something that we can do without technology. We have to have something. Google Apps knowledge is absolutely critical. If you do not know how to use Google Apps, and when I say Google Apps, I'm talking about Google Documents, Google Slides. Those two are the main ones that we usually use with Hyperdocs. I have seen other educators use Google Sites as well. I think that's too much in my opinion. But basic Google knowledge is what we're looking for here. Websites to link to Hyperdocs. So websites, but not just websites. I should have said it as technology tools, things like that. If you already have technology that you'd like to use, or if there's games you like to use, like I like to use quizzes, you could even put a Kahoot in there. You'd have to do that live later, but these are all different options. So you do want to think about stuff you enjoy using now. So maybe you like to use Khan Academy. You can definitely link different Khan Academy lessons to your Hyperdoc. So speaking of the skills and knowledge, so when we're talking about Google applications, again, like I said, Google Slides and Google Documents are probably the main ones you're going to use. You want to think about, do you and or your students already know how to use any of the items above? Because if they don't know, or if you don't know, then this is really where you're going to want to go out and learn and then teach your students how to use this as well. The advantage of using Google, in addition to the things I covered yesterday, is that I've noticed that a lot of colleges are now using Google Documents as well. So you're exposing them to this before they even get to college. So they don't have to walk in and have to learn something new again in college. They will already have the knowledge. Things that you really need to know how to do once you start using Hyperdocs is you need to know how to share a document, inserting hyperlinks, locating items on Google Drive. A lot of people I've noticed, especially my students, when they walk in, they may have a Google account, but they don't know they have a Google Drive. So Google Drive, if you aren't familiar, is basically, I call it my online filing cabinet. It's where everything gets stored, and every time you create something through Google, it saves automatically to your Google Drive so that you can always go back and find it later. It's also important to understand how to share your documents, especially in view-only mode. So this is really important because this has blown up in my face more than once. If you share a document and you have it in edit mode, you better be prepared for somebody to start typing on your document and they may ruin your document. So you want to make sure you know how to share it in view-only mode. Also how to insert tables to keep your Hyperdoc clean and organized. That way you're able to have them put their answers in the table slots, which I will be showing you more of this in a little bit here. Also how to integrate other sites. And then furthermore, you need to know how to make a copy of your Hyperdoc, insert images, insert videos, and I think it's very important to collaborate with others. Obviously, you don't have to do that, but I really highly encourage you to do that because there's so much to learn out there and so many cool Hyperdocs that are already out there and made that other educators are willing to share. And these things that I've mentioned, I'm going to be modeling at least some of them for you. I don't mind if you see something that I don't do and you really want to see it. I certainly don't mind showing you that as well. Just type it in the chat pod. So technology ideas. Design your Hyperdoc to meet your students' needs. Your instructional objectives. You need to really think about these things before you do smartphones, etc. Think about what you do have. I know not everybody has these things. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm spoiled. I have a computer lab that's available to me every day, almost every day anyhow. But in addition to that, I have a director who supplies us with technology as well. We have laptops, we have Chromebooks, we even have iPads. So best technology is obviously going to be desktop computers, laptops, and Chromebooks. In particular, the reason I personally like those things beyond the obvious is that they're using their keyboarding skills, which I think is very critical to our students because most of them do not know how to type. Unlike me, they never took typing classes. Student devices, you can also use iPads, notebooks, and cell phones. I'm not a huge fan of the cell phone for Hyperdocs. I think it's too small. That's my opinion. I've seen it done before, and I think it's a little confusing, but it can be done. And, you know, the students are more comfortable with the cell phones than I am. So maybe it would, at least the younger ones are. So it could work, but I would really proceed with caution on cell phones because you need to really pay attention to the links you use. And I'd make sure that your Hyperdoc is very simple, not too complicated, and not very long. If you completely lack technology, you may want to group prepare your students. You can also walk through your Hyperdoc on an overhead as a class. You could even have the students come up to the overhead and maybe take turns on different parts of it and still do it as a group. You could also assign it as homework. My recommendation here, especially if they're new to this and it's new to you, is you do it, walk through one or a couple together in class and show them how it works. And then you could definitely assign it to them and have them go to maybe an outside computer lab or a library to do their work somewhere that they have actual internet service and a computer to use. All right, so I'm going to stop there for a moment and see if there's any comments or questions or any other ideas that may have been shared in the chat box.
There are not any right now. Does anyone?
Okay. Okay. All right, then we will continue. So we're going to start looking at actually creating a Hyperdoc. So the first one I'm going to do, so I'm going to show you two different versions actually. The first one I'm going to show you is going to be this is my go-to one. It's my favorite one because it's so simple and easy to follow. And I'm also going to show you where to find these. So this is a template that's already been made for me. Not specifically for me, but it's been made for us with the intention that we get to use it and make our own. So the first thing you will notice is that it's guiding me through each step. which I love because that keeps me very focused. And I like the look and feel of this one because I feel like it's so organized. And anyway, so the first thing you're going to know is right now it says view only. So you cannot do anything. If you try to type on this right now, you can't do anything. And when you're sharing your document, you don't want the other person to do anything because you want them to have a copy, but you don't want them to ruin yours. So you need to go to File and make a copy. And you can rename it if you want to. We'll just call it sample. Right now, this document is located in somebody else's folder. So you want to go to your own folder, which I'm just going to go all the way back because so many people have had this. I'm going to go to My Drive. And then if you have folders already made, you can drop it into one of those. I have a Hyperdocs folder. I'm just going to drop it in there. And then just click on OK. Once you've clicked on OK, it's now your document. So you can go ahead and exit out of the original. And now you're able to do whatever you want to with this. So you can put your title. I usually just delete all of this off of there, but you're welcome to add additional directions, especially if it's a new group of students. And then from there, you'll see that we have the Engage, Explore, Explain, Apply, Share, Reflect, and Extend sections. And you walk through each thing. So if I want to engage my students with, let's say, a video, and everything, really the key with Google Documents of any kind is go to Insert, because that's where you do pretty much everything. So if I want to insert a video, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. If I want to insert a video, well, you're going to see I can't insert videos on a Google document. So keep that in mind. But I can insert a link. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that you can either upload it from your computer, you can search the web. If you have an image already on your drive, you could do that. If you have photos, or you could either include a URL, or you could take a picture if you wanted to. So I'm just going to search the web. And let's see, we'll just put technology. And I'm just going to grab that image there. You can manipulate it however you want to. But usually there might be something, usually after I add something like an image, I'm going to ask a question. I like to keep it to the left, so I might say, what does this image make you think of? And then the way I like to do it is I like to insert a box. So I go back to Insert, and I go to Table, and I just click the one box so that they know. Sometimes if they're just getting started, you might want to put type answer in box. But that would be if it was an image. If I wanted to do a YouTube video instead, you could go find your video. Let's say 21st century. Obviously, you want to review it before you do it, but for what we're doing, I'm just going to grab one. So I copied the link, and this is very, very important to know how to do this. You want to go to Insert, and you're going to Insert Link. And you're going to paste your video there. But what I like to do, especially if I'm just getting started with a new group of students and they're not really familiar with the link, whether it's a link and they click on it or not, I will actually guide them through it. Click here to access video. Something like that. And then there, they know it's there. I'm going to put it in the middle there. And then the students would click, and then they'd follow the link. And then they're able to watch the video, and usually it's kind of like what I did with the image here. I like them to go back and answer some sort of questions. The Engage section is really just kind of your warm-up, your hook, just to kind of get them going. So then my next step would be to follow again if I want to follow this. Now, keep in mind, you don't have to do this exactly. You can do whatever you want. I mean, it's your document, it's your lesson. If you want to add something, especially if I do like a reading assignment, or what I really like to do if it's a history assignment or something like that, I'll add a section and I'll add like a pre-assessment. What do you know now? Tell me everything you know about the Civil War, something like that, so that I have an idea, get the prior knowledge idea going. Or with pre-reading, I like to do a pre-vocabulary lesson or something like that. So you can change it up as much as you want to. It's your world. You get to do whatever you want. From here, you may want to go to the Explore section. Here again, you can use videos, infographics, text excerpts for students to explore a topic. The Explain section is usually, this is sometimes where you want to do direct instruction. Maybe you want to have a discussion. Or you can just have them continue working on another site. That's really up to you how you want to do it. The Apply section, this is where I like them to show me that they understand what they've learned. So sometimes you might want to have them create their own Google slideshow. Other times I may have them do classwork on a wonderful tool called Formative, which is actually like a mini lesson in itself, definitely worth checking out. And also the cool thing about Formative, just a side note, is if you instead of giving them a worksheet, say you're doing math, you can upload a worksheet into Formative and turn it into a digital worksheet so that you don't have to make any copies, which makes me very happy. And I might put that in the Apply section because then I can see what they're doing and they're able to practice what they have explored or learned. Share section, now this is where I like to use, you guys saw it probably at least 3 times yesterday. This is where I always like to put in a Padlet or maybe an answer garden. So if I wanted to do something like that, I could probably pull one up real quickly here. Let's see, we'll go to here we go. How could you use Hyperdocs in your classroom? So if I wanted to put this link on there, oops, I almost left the webinar, sorry. I don't want to do that. I can't see this side because this thing is on the side. But anyway, I could share the Padlet on the side of a Padlet, you can grab a share bar. But I would do the same thing. I just take this off, go to this Padlet, and share your thoughts, something like that. What you can do also is if you don't know how to do this, I can show you this as well because I was so excited when I figured out how to do this because it took me a while. But you can actually take an image. If you have an image on your, I don't know what I have on my computer, but I'll search the web again. But if you have some sort of an image, we'll just put technology again. And we have our technology. So you have an image. If you have an image and you want them to click on it so they go to the link instead of having the words, you click on the image like I've done here. Click on Insert. And then there's your link. You put your link there, click on Apply, and then of course, you have to tell the students, though, to click on it. They're not going to just know. They might know eventually, but you just tell them, click on the link to access Padlet. And then from there, they click on it. It takes them straight there. I was so excited when I figured out how to do that. It took me forever. Okay. And then finally, this is the Reflect section. How you do that is up to you. I usually like them to write because they need a lot of practice in that. So again, I'll tell them to write. I'll add a box there if you want. Some people like them to say, please express yourself or what you learned, maybe with an image from a Google search or something like that. That is up to you. And then the Extend section, as I mentioned yesterday, that's going to be the section where you add additional activities for them, which might be anything from additional games or more research or something like that. The one other thing I wanted to show, which I forgot, is another thing I like to do. You can also do your Apply section right here. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll ask them some sort of a question, and then I'll say, please fill in chart below. Or they may be reading about something, and then I want them to fill in what they're learning as they go. So again, I'm going to add my table, which you can make it as long as you want. We're just going to say like 5 slots. And then they'll have something here and they'll answer here. It just keeps it really nice and orderly and organized. But that's mostly what it is for a template. And this template in particular, like I said, this is a basic one. It's my favorite one. I just think it's nice and clean. And this is in the form of a Google document. Okay, let me get back to my slides here. You can also, though, I just want to kind of show you real quick. This is my website, so I just took us there because there's sample Hyperdoc templates on this as well. So some of these also are in the form of Google Slides. Google Slides, what I do like about it is there's more freedom, especially if you're kind of artsy and you like to make things pretty or whatever. You want to add in more images. That's when I would use something like this. I tend to like to use it. I would probably use it for ESL if I taught ESL, but I definitely use it for ABE quite a bit. But this one gives you a different kind of a template to use. Again, it's in view only, so you'd want to go ahead and make a copy. And you've got your engage, explore, explain, apply. And it's the same concept, just a different look. You can also, I can't do it because I'm in view only. Let me go ahead and make a copy. So in this one, you can actually embed a video if you wanted to. So there's some benefits to using Google Slides over the other one. So if you wanted to find a video, you could do it straight from there. That sounds interesting. And then there you have it. You can go ahead and manipulate it however you want from there. You add directions if you want, that sort of thing. But then this way, it's actually just right there instead of them going off to another link. Okay. And before we get to questions and comments, I want to also show you, so what I'm showing you today is basically the template, as I just showed you, is if you want to make something from scratch. And then the next thing I'm going to show you is how to make one or use one that's already been made and how to edit it and, basically make it your own. So the example I'm going to show you, this is an example I did show you yesterday. Look at all my tabs are open now here. That took me to the wrong place, didn't it? All right. We'll just go to this one. Sometimes it's going to appear this way when you open it. Just click on Make a Copy. It forces you to make a copy right away. So this one was one that I had originally made on goal setting, which I demonstrated for you yesterday. Well, I had shared it with a colleague of mine who works for, she works for a different adult ed organization, and she wanted to make it a little bit different to meet the needs of her students, and I like what she did with it. She added to it. So this was her version, and she just changed it. She changed it to meet her needs as her organization. So she changed the fonts, and she wanted to make it different. So she still did the same concept using the table and the charts. And then in this section, I do believe she actually added, she added GED scores to it too, which is a pretty good idea, I thought. So, and she can kind of change the colors and that sort of a thing. If you don't know how to do that, you just click on it and you can do the highlight colors, and, basically it's just similar to like a PowerPoint. But that would be, those are examples. But then I wanted to actually show you if I wanted to go find one, because let's say I'm lacking inspiration and I don't know what to do. So I want to just go explore and see what other people out there have done. Well, what I've just pulled up is a Hyperdoc Padlet that has been made by educators around everywhere, pretty much. And this one is one of my favorite ones, and I am supplying you with all of these resources, just so you know as well. So this one is the English ELA Hyperdoc Power. I always like this one because there's usually some pretty creative short stories and things like that on there. So if I looked, so this Tracy Enos is one of my favorite educators because she's very, very, very creative. Now, keep in mind, she teaches 8th grade, so I usually have to change quite a bit of hers, but I would click on it, and I can kind of get, I can see what she's got and what she's doing, basically. I can just kind of preview it if I want to use it and try to decide. If I think it's probably too juvenile, I might want to go ahead and look at somebody else's. The one that kind of caught my eye earlier was this one. This one was actually made by one of the original Hyperdocs ladies. Sorry, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. This one's called Humans of New York, which really, really intrigued me quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and, because I like it and I might have to tweak it, but I'm going to go to File. I'm going to make a copy. I'm going to put it in my own drive here. And as soon as it loads, it's now mine. And yeah, and Kelly Hilton, she's one of the original Hyperdocs girls who came up with the idea. But just by looking through her various slides, the one thing I noticed is right away I learned about a new tool. I've heard of it. I've never used it, and now I'm curious. But Adobe Spark. It looks like it's some sort of post with visuals, and it looks very intriguing. So now I'd have to explore. But if I felt like I don't use that, I want to use something else, well, this is where I would probably go in and change it. And since I can edit anything on here, I can change whatever I want. A lot of times what you'll find with the K through 12 Hyperdocs is they're extremely long. And sometimes there's just too much because they might be using it for like weeks or months on end, and I usually don't have that much time. I did want to make a quick side note because I know that question came up, and I usually mention this and I didn't think of it yesterday. The question of time comes up a lot. Because this looks like, oh my God, how many hours did you spend on this? And sometimes, I'm not going to lie to you, I did, but you don't have to. The other question is, do you have to make a Hyperdoc every day? No, you do not. Usually Hyperdocs, for me anyway, the way I make them, they tend to last it could be a couple days at least, or sometimes it may be several weeks. It usually turns into a bit of a unit type of a thing. So that, again, it's determined on what you do. If you just make a nice simple one that you can do in a day, then great, you can just do that one in that day. Okay, so I've done a lot of talking, so I'm going to stop now and see if there's any comments or questions that have come in that we need to answer.
Hi, Ashly. There have been a few comments, questions have come in. The first one is probably more appropriate for the discussion group that David mentioned, and we'll give a link to you towards the end of the presentation. Just to quickly summarize, it's about taking Hyperdocs and make it engaging for students, and sort of in specific cases how to tips for doing that. But again, I think that might be something.
Yeah, we're going to have to save that one. We could be here for hours if we don't do
yes. And then I think this may have been addressed, but I'll just say it anyway. Do you have a template that has a list in each?
I'm sorry, do I have a template that what?
Steve, you cut out.
Oh, shoot. Can you hear me, Ashly?
I can hear you now.
Okay, good. It says, do you have a template that has a list in each of the lesson sections, the online tools she uses most often? So some sort of template for the sections explore, explain.
Yes. There's a lot of templates. Honestly, there's so many resources out there, it's ridiculous. Yes, there's several templates I have, and like I said, I've composed and put a bunch of them on my website. But even if you just do a Google search, it's not only templates that they have available. People have put together actual resources that they like to use with Hyperdocs, and that's out there as well. If you join Pinterest groups or look on Pinterest, it's all over there as well. A lot of people in K through 12, especially, as I said yesterday, because they're the ones who really jumped into this and they've just gone crazy. But they'll use all sorts of technology. I use what I know. And then, of course, I always like to learn about something new. So I'll I'll learn something and then I may add it. That's not really what you asked, but that kind of added that onto it because a lot of people are like, I don't know what to do. But honestly, when I started, and I was talking to my boss about this yesterday, when I started doing this, I kept it simple. I used things I knew how to use. I just had them go to articles and things like that. And by the way, if you do have them go to an article, I really recommend, there's a couple of these out there, but using I think it's a Google add-on or a Google extension, but it's called Just Read. And it takes all but basically what it does, it takes all the ads off of the page so they're not distracted. And then you can turn around and you can print that to your Google Drive and share it on your Hyperdoc, which is super great because then it's a nice clean sheet instead of having to send them off to some crazy article that has a bunch of ads on it. Was there anything else?
Yes.
Ashly,
Go ahead, David.
I'll wait till you're finished, Steve, but then I have a question, Ashly.
Sure.
Okay.
One, it's been answered about the ads. So about the ads on things that you bring into Hyperdocs. And then another one is whether they're adult basic ed collection of Hyperdocs. So anything in that area.
That's what my website is. That's
Okay.
what it's committed to. So trust me, nobody, now I can't say nobody, but I never found anybody using this before I started using it. I was desperately searching for adult ed and it didn't seem that there was anybody out there. Doesn't mean there isn't, but I didn't find them. I've found people doing similar things, but not the same. So what I did, and I'll show that to you again before we're done, is the website itself is I created my own. I started with a Padlet. I started an adult ed Padlet, which you're welcome to explore that as well. And you're welcome to add your own there too. Please, please, please do, because I'm trying to put together a collection. But my website, that's exactly what it is. I have it broken out into the different categories every single time I make a Hyperdoc, which is a lot. I've put it on. I think I myself have created over 70 of them, at least at this point, and more probably by now. But I also have different educators who are sharing with me that are specific to adult ed who are sharing. And of course, the nice thing about it is, our intention is for adult educators and not, 8th graders. So we don't have to change quite as much. The one recommendation I always forget to tell people sometimes, and I had this happen recently, you may come across a lazy teacher and they may think they can just take this, send it to their students and go to sleep. That's not how this works. Take a nap or play on Facebook. That's not how this works. You have to go through it yourself because a lot of times I'm going to have things on there that are connected to the students having an account with something, and your students aren't going to be able to use the same thing. So that can be confusing for the student, and then, you need to really be walking through and seeing what each thing is. And if you think something might just be too hard for your group, and then you might want to change it. But I will, you're going to get all of that before we go.
Great.
David, did you have a question?
Yeah, could you go back to the slide of the Hyperdoc template that you were using?
This one?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So okay. In yesterday's webinar, you very briefly mentioned that Hyperdocs can be used to personalize. And so I'm wondering, suppose, for example, you have one student who really can do a lot more than the other students, and that in the extend section, for that one student, you want to put in a whole bunch of other readings that you wouldn't necessarily give to all the students. How do you do that? How do you personalize?
So you'd have to make two different versions, obviously. But once you're in, which I'm about to show, so this is good timing on this. So once you're in, depending on how you decide that you're going to share your Hyperdocs with your students, like I said, I do mine through Google Classroom. the nice thing about Google Classroom is I can individually assign it to students. So all I would do is I'd use the same template, but I would make a copy and make it personalized to that individual student, and I would only share it with him or her instead of sharing it with the entire class, if that makes sense.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about then how to share with your students. So if you use a learning management system like Schoology, Edmodo, or Google Classroom, this would be my #1 suggestion for sharing the link on your site or making a copy for each student. So if you don't know what a learning management system is, I call it my home base. It's basically, the best way to put it is it's like an online classroom. So it's a place that you can share. It's a place that you can collaborate, send messages, have discussion boards, things like that. Each tool is different. The best one that and I've tried all of them. I've tried I have a Schoology account as well, but now that I'm using Google Classroom, I highly recommend Google Classroom because it works perfectly with Hyperdocs. And I'm going to demo that for you in just a little bit here. But if you don't want to use a learning management system, you're welcome to shorten your link of your Hyperdoc with a Google shortener or Bitly. All you have to do is copy the link and paste it in there, and it'll shorten it so it's not so long for the students to have to type. You could also, if you're using mobile devices of some sort, you could always create a QR code for them. QR code, do I have that on there? I do. No, it's not on there. But you can have, I must have had it on my other computer, but you can create a QR code within moments if you go to just Google QR code creator, and you just paste the code in there, and it creates you a code right away, and then you just copy it and put it on a piece of paper, and the students can just scan it, and it shows right up. But that's it shows right up on their device. I usually use that if I'm doing face-to-face trainings on that. I will make that an option for them to access it online as well as having a paper version or something. QR codes are pretty cool. Or you can email the link to your students. These are the options that I have come up with anyhow. But like I said, my recommendation, especially if you find that you think you're going to use this quite regularly, is Google Classroom. So with that, we're going to look at Google Classroom. And I'm actually going to show you two things. So if you have a Google account already, Gmail account, you can get a Google Classroom very easily. So you just type Google Classroom in your browser. So if I didn't have this up, I could just type Google Classroom. It comes right up, and there it is. And then, as you can see, I have several classes in mine. But for what we're doing today, I'm going to look at an overview of my actual HSE class. We're not going to see the students, but I just want to show you kind of how I use it right now. What I like about Google Classroom above any other learning management system is it's simple and it has a very nice interface. So for my other teachers that don't really care for technology, this is where I direct them to start. You can see that I also have shared my Google Classroom with some other teachers, so we share with each other. We kind of get to see what each other's doing, or we just demo to see how we're using it. But from there, you notice that there's a feed here. What I also like is you can create topics. You can do this however you want. I saw one teacher I know, she does this by like semesters or quarters or something like that. That's not how my program's set up. So I just do it by subject matter instead, and you can see all my different lessons that I have done in that subject. So it keeps it very organized, and you can always redo it if you want to. I also usually use it so that my students know what the agenda is for that day. And then this is where you can see the actual what their assignment. So the other day I gave them an option. We're in a transitions training right now, so they had an option of doing a career ready Hyperdoc or a college prep Hyperdoc. So we're going to look at a fake account that I just made last night. And a couple people have joined for me just so I could show you what I'm able to. I want to give you a demonstration basically on how you're going to add your Hyperdoc, assign it, and then what you're able to see from the student's perspective. So the first thing is you're going to do is you're going to go to the plus sign on the bottom of your screen. Once again, I can't see it because that thing's in my way. Hold on just a second here. Let me move it over here, maybe. All right, so you're going to go to the plus sign. From there, it's going to say create announcement, create assignment, create question, or reuse post. The create a question is cool if you want to do a really quick poll, or you can have a discussion post. But what we're going to do is we're going to create the assignment. I'll try to make this bigger again, sorry. And from here, this is where what I was talking about, David, if I wanted to only go to you, I clear that. I could just assign that to you that way. Or usually I want to do it with all students. It just depends on my class. I usually put a title. We're going to do, this one was called Kinetic and Potential Energy. You can put the instructions. I usually tell them go to link, follow directions. And then the final part is to turn in their assignment. If you want to put a due date, you can add a due date to it. You do not have to. And then if you want to add it to a topic, well, this class was just created last night, so I don't have topics yet, but I can go ahead and create one right then and there. I'll call it science. But now I don't have the assignment there, so I'm going to just grab it from my Google Drive. This is the Google Drive symbol here. So I'm going to grab it from Google Drive. I'm going to search because I know I want the kinetic and potential energy one. Now, this is one that I did that I probably spent a ridiculous amount of time on. But part of it, though, in my defense is I didn't know anything about this topic because I'm not very good at science. So that was half of what I was doing, was learning about it myself. But anyway, from there, this is the most important part. So really pay attention to this part. Right now it says students can view files. So what that means is, and that's how I used to assign it. So what that means is the students can see the file, they can't type on it right now. So what I used to make them do is make their own copy, add a title, and they'd go on, and it was all these extra steps, and then they had to turn around and come back into the assignment and attach their file. Well, there were so many steps, and and they got pretty good at it, but and then one day somebody said, did you know you can do this? Click here, make a copy for each student, and the second it's assigned, the student goes in and it already has their name on it. It's already been assigned to them. I can see what they're doing as they're doing it, and they don't have to do any of those extra steps. If you forget to do that, I'm not going to lie, you're probably going to have a rough time. Every time I forget to do it, I cry. I really do. It's a sad, sad thing. Because you can't I usually just completely go, okay, don't do anything else. Let's start over from scratch. The other warning would be is if you clicked on student can edit. Well, if the student can edit, that means every person in the room can edit the same document, and that's not going to go very well either. So that's the one thing. But them being able to have an automatic copy is awesome. But from there, so this is the lesson. I clicked on the wrong thing, but this is what the lesson looks like. And what it would look like to them, unfortunately, I can't show it from here, but their name would be attached right here. And then over up in this corner here, it would say turn it in. So when they're done with the assignment, they simply click on a button that says turn it in. And once they turn it in, they can't do anything else with that assignment until you return it to them. So what I wanted to show you, though, was what I see from my side. So from here, then, and yeah, see, we're going to look at David. So as David might be working on this, I could actually see what he's doing if I wanted to. So from my computer, I could be sitting here, and maybe I don't think he's doing anything at all. But usually I don't have that problem with my students, but I might see it, but maybe I think they're going the wrong direction or something. But I could turn around and either comment on here, just highlight it, and then I could add a comment. It's not working. Well, I can't see because that thing's in my way again. But anyway, I can add a comment, or I could just go over and talk to him just to make sure that we get on the right. There it is. I couldn't see it. So I would click on comment. I'd say something, click on comment, and then he could go resolve it. or I could simply, and more likely what I would do is just walk over and let them know. But I can also do that if I'm just looking at it from home and I'm just grading it. I can make comments as I go to let them know what they did right, what they did wrong, if they did well. And then what I really like is now I can do grades. And if they did everything and they did it well, obviously I'm going to give them 100. You return it to them. Even though, so usually these will be submitted, but you can still return it even if sometimes they forget to submit the assignment, but I look through them anyway. And then you can say something like, great job. And then they get it on their end and they're able to take it or look at it, or sometimes they have to redo it, that sort of thing. But that's the advantage of using Google Classroom. Like I said, it is one of my favorite tools out there. You can also change your background up here. I usually like to change the image to whatever we're working on. But you can just select a theme. And I know this isn't a Google Classroom lesson, but I just kind of wanted to show it to you a little bit because I know a lot of people had questions about that. Okay, let me get back to my slides here. We did that. Okay, so I'm going to, I know I'm getting short on time here, but I'm going to pause for a second to see if there was any questions about that last section.
Yes, Ashley. Most of these questions that have been submitted are ones that are very appropriate for the discussion group. So we'll give you the link to that at the end, and you can submit those.
Okay.
One thing I'm going to, in the chat box, I'm going to send out the link to your website because that's
Great.
what people ask for that.
Great.
That's it for
Okay.
now.
All right. Well, then I will go ahead and finish it up here then. Okay. So just a couple things about how to use a lesson. So this is where I kind of mentioned this yesterday that I've read before that teachers are like, well, what the heck do? I don't understand how to do this. Do I just give it to them and then I just go hang out or what? So these are my recommendations. As students work independently, teacher acts as a facilitator. So you can do that from your computer. You can walk around the room. You basically are making yourself available, especially to the student who might be struggling more than another. The nice thing about my students now is they're so well trained that they help each other first. And then if they still can't figure it out, that's when they bring me in too. So there's really a lot of opportunity there. As a class, the teacher can guide students through steps. So as I said yesterday as well, with my ABE class, when I first got this group of ladies, we started by walking through, I did it through a Google slide. I walked through each slide with them. We did it together. I basically gave them guidance to get them started, and then we'd go through each slide by slide together. Well, that same group, which I just reacquired that same group this week, as a matter of fact, that same group had been with a different teacher for the last 6 months, had not been on a computer almost at all. However, they walked in my classroom, they got onto that computer, and they just went to work. And they just seemed as happy as could be. So I was pretty happy about that. As groups, students can also collaborate and work on Hyperdocs together. So they don't have to do it independently. I do have to know who is involved in it, but they can do it together, where I have done it as group work more than once. Or you can just have certain sections of your Hyperdoc doing group activities. So we're still able to collaborate. Another option is from the overhead, students and teachers can either review or work through their sections together. So what I usually like to do is, especially if it's more independent, I usually will walk through the entire Hyperdoc as a class together at the end of it. And sometimes we'll do it throughout it as well. It just depends. And then you can also flip the classroom or distance learning homework, which we also talked about yesterday. Have I done either of these yet? Not yet, but it is, I promise you it is in my future in the next few months. So I may report in on that discussion board on how that goes. And then to kind of finalize this, I wanted to show you, now I have provided all of these on a sample Hyperdoc, which I need to share that link too. But this is when I think I keep saying David, I'm sorry, I think Steve is putting that into the chat pod. This is the website that you had asked about, Hyperdocs for Adult Educators. I've provided an overview. These are the ladies who started it. as well as how-to guideline. And these are some of these videos I've made, some of them other people have made. These are the templates. You see there's all kinds of templates available. And there's probably more than this out there if you explore. And then we've got language arts, math, social studies, science, ESL, career and college, digital literacy, and even professional development. And we have a discussion board that nobody's discussed on, but I put it there. And then my contact information. So there's a lot of please use this. I encourage you to use this because there's been a lot of work that's been put into this, and I continue to update it regularly. Beyond that, I'm just going to show you a couple of other sites that I recommend. This is the original Hyperdocs website. There's resources you can search here as well, so you're welcome to find it. You're going to find more K through 12 items here. Other ones that I think, I already showed you the Padlet, but there are more than one. There's a lot of Padlets out there. There's not just one. This one has just a variation, just different variety of Hyperdocs. It just says Hyperdocs, so there's different ones. They are really fun if you have time, of course, to just kind of go and explore and see what people have done. Some people have done some amazing things, but I have seen them as long as 100 pages long before. So I wouldn't do that in adult education. And then this lady took the time, which I thought this was pretty amazing, is she made this live binder, and a live binder is basically like a bookmarking site type of thing. It organizes everything. She took, and this was a long time ago, actually, this was at least 9 months ago, but she took everybody's that she was aware of, and she put it on this live binder that is not opening. But these are all different Hyperdocs. This is Adapt for Any Age. This is 10 through 12, 7 through 9, K through 6. But you can still use them. And I mean, a lot of them you can use and tweak them however you want to. And then she also included the Padlet Drive collections, which I was so excited because she even included mine, which is the adult education Padlet. This is how I had originally started organizing my Hyperdocs, but quickly found that I was making too many and I liked the way it looked on the website better. But if you do make one and you want to share it, I would love it if you added to this, and then I could add it to my website. So I encourage that. And then the only other one I'm really, really going to advise, because I am running out of time, I have 3 minutes, is if what's really helped me with this process is online communities. I have learned so many things, but not just that. This Facebook Hyperdocs group is incredible. It's things like this. They ask for, has anybody made anything like this? Can you make suggestions? Can you share? Can you, just different things. This lady asked for presentations, so then I responded to her to give her some examples of things I had done. But mostly, and you can even search the group. So if I wanted to search the group for, I don't know, let's just say lamb, because this is one I showed yesterday, the lamb to the slaughter Hyperdoc. If I wanted to find it because I saw it somewhere, then it takes you straight there, and you can go. And a lot of times people who make them, I do it myself, when you make them you get kind of excited and want to share with others. So they'll come over here, they'll post to it and say, hey, check it out, or do you want to make suggestions or anything like that, or if you just want to use it for your own classroom. But this group, I think it's over about 8,000 members now, and it's all over the world. I did want to address one more thing before I went, because I got excited. Yesterday somebody asked me if there were Spanish Hyperdocs, and there is, and so I've added that to my resources section of my, I think it's this one as a matter of fact. Yes, I'm actually going to share this right now. I added it to the resources. So there is an entire group of Spanish Hyperdocs, and I also found an ESL group as well. So that is going to be on the very bottom. Let me put it in the chat so I don't forget, so that you can have access to it. But I put it on the very bottom of this document here. So these are all the ones, and I'm not telling you there aren't more, because there are more out there. But these are the ones I recommend for us at this point. And that is pretty much all I have, and I think I am down to 1 minute. So are there any further questions that we can address now before the discussion?
Ashly, I have a question. It's David.
Yes.
I imagine that at least some people on this webinar at this point might want to make a Hyperdoc. And I'm
Okay.
wondering if that's something that we might do next week in the asynchronous
Absolutely.
discussion. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
people can make whatever Hyperdoc they want and get help along the way.
Absolutely. I would love to do that.
Okay.
And I would love to do it even after the discussion. I mean, if you ever have questions or suggestions, I had one lady recently who's been sending me emails just trying to figure out how to make it more digital, her normal lessons. So yeah, I'm definitely here and available. And like you said, I'm pretty passionate about this.
One of the things that we could do in links, if there's sufficient interest, is create a micro group within integrating technology. If we have a few people who are really passionate about making adult ed Hyperdocs and who want to have an online community, we could set that up, I think.
Okay, that sounds great. All right, did you want me to move that last slide?
Yeah,
That's the one you wanted. No.
one question here was about how searching through Hyperdocs or Google Classroom and how you do that. Sort of how do you organize things so that previous information you put on there you can get back to?
Oh. On Google Classroom, is that what the question was?
Yes, let's see, on Google Classroom.
Okay, so Google Classroom's pretty, let me just pull one up. Because I've done the most work on this one. The one thing is that you can do, I try to keep everything as close to the top as possible. The one thing that does happen is the stuff on the bottom doesn't go away unless you delete it, and I don't want to delete everything. I usually delete these, but I try to keep them on the top. So if I make something, I usually move it to the top so the student sees it right away. I don't know if that completely answers your question, but the other thing is everything is organized over here. So I've got my social studies, science, reading. I have a first day of class section also. So that keeps it pretty organized as well. But if you don't want to keep it on here, you don't have to. If you feel like maybe it makes it too busy, you can always delete it. I'm not 100% sure I answered that question.
The other question is the Google Slides versus Google Docs, Hyperdocs. What are the pros and cons of each, or in what situation would you use one or the other? The person posting that said they're more familiar with Google Slides.
Okay. Well, Google Docs is usually, Google Docs is to me, it's more simple. It's not very visual, let's put it that way. So if you have a group, that's why I said I kind of recommend this for ABE and ESL in particular, or it might depend on the subject matter. So when I was working on the kinetic and potential energy one, which is pretty visual and engaging, it's because I felt like making it that way, to be honest, but it also kind of helps those students that are a little bit more visual learners. The other thing is I like to use Google Slides. You just have more freedom with Google Slides. You can move things around more easily. You can add more images. You can add the videos, embed the video right into it. There's different options. And, it's kind of like and if you don't know, Google Slides is basically a PowerPoint, but it's free. But that's why but I like to do it when I'm in a little bit more of an artsy mood and I feel like creating something. And honestly, if I'm just doing it, because sometimes I just make these because it's fun to me. I'm probably not normal, but they are fun to me sometimes. But that's why I would use the Google Slides. I'd use it for visualization purposes. I find it to be better for my lower level classes. But if I'm in a big hurry and I don't have time to be fancy or anything like that. I mean, I've made one before within 45 minutes before a class. So I came in at 7:30, had something in mind. I said, we're going to do something on planets. And I just started exploring. I went through that exact template on a Google Doc, had it done within 45 minutes. We did the lesson that day. So it can take you hours and hours on end, or it can take you no time at all. But the benefit, no matter what, is what I always say about using technology, is you have it forever. So you can always reuse it and you can always share it with others.
Great.
Anything else? Oh, you want me to put that back up, I bet.
then please go to the discussion and we'll put the link up for that. So please go to that. The link is at the bottom of this page, and bring additional questions, ideas for discussion. And as David suggested, that will be a place where you can actually create a Hyperdoc and learn other things and interact with other people who are interested in doing this. I also want to remind people to please take the survey. This survey will provide us feedback on the presentation today, and it helps us in general sort of know what we can improve, what has gone well, what we can improve on. Ashly, I want to thank you very much. In addition to the questions, there were a number of people who really appreciated.
You cut out again.
Steve, please say that again after appreciated. We lost you.
You didn't hear me, sorry. A number of people appreciated the webinar and what you have, the information you've given and ideas that you have presented to people.
Great, I'm glad. Thank you so much. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me present it. When I discovered this a little over a year ago, this was what I wanted to do. I wanted to share this with as many adult educators as I have been able to. I've been very lucky I've been able to do this, and this was a great opportunity for me as well. So like I said, I'm open to helping, and I look forward to next week.
Great.
Great. We look forward to seeing all of you on integrating technology next week, and Ashly will be with us all week.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.